Hey there everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports, and in today's video we're coming at you with another first round mock draft on the channel. We're going to be going through the entire first round in this video. If you're excited, go ahead, leave a like, and also smash that subscribe button and leave a comment on today's video. If you do all three of those things, you will be entered for a free Justin Fields jersey giveaway. That is right, fully free to you. All you have to do are those three things that I mentioned. Like, subscribe, comment. It takes about 15-20 seconds of your time, and you could be walking away with a free Justin Fields jersey. We're super excited to be able to give one of those out. Your guys' support on the channel has been so awesome. We really do appreciate it. Now let's jump into the order here. This is from Tankathon, the official order if the draft were today, the day I'm recording this. Now I am recording this prior to Thursday Night Football, before the Week 10 matchup. So the order could change if you're watching this on Friday or Saturday or Sunday, right? The order's going to change a little bit. That's why you have to be subscribed for our future mock drafts on the channel. Pick one. We got the Detroit Lions, then followed up by the Texans, Dolphins, Jets, Jags, football team, Eagles. We got the Giants, Bears, and actually Dolphins here is the Eagles as well, excuse me. The Niners here is actually the Dolphins pick. Seahawks pick goes to the Jets. We got Vikings, Panthers, Eagles again at 14. Then we got Broncos, Bengals, Browns, Chiefs, Falcons, Patriots, Saints, Steelers, Raiders, Cowboys, Bills, Chargers, Bucks, Rams, who just signed Odell Beckham Jr. today, Ravens, Packers. Actually, the Rams pick here is also going to the Detroit Lions, of course. Ravens, Packers, Titans, Cardinals. So let's go ahead here now, enter the actual draft, and let's get talking about who I think is going to go where at each spot. Now, there's a lot of controversy starting at pick number 1 about who the Detroit Lions are going to go, because there's a lot of pressure from the fan base, specifically some of the bigger fans, more notable fans like on YouTube, that really want a quarterback based off of Jared Goff's production and play this year. They don't feel comfortable with what they have at that quarterback spot. However, I think there's a lot of other fans who are looking at this in a more long-term, slow rebuild approach, even if that means the Lions don't win a game this year, and that even means if the Lions don't win very many games next year, they're okay with that. They have 4 first-round picks over the next 2 years. So for me, I have a decision to make. Do I want to go quarterback, or do I want to go best player available in this year's class at pick 1? To me, I know a lot of Lions fans keep saying, I want to trade down. There's not going to be a big machine offer. There's a big offer that's going to be like, wow, we need to trade down here for the number 1 pick in a class where we're not so certain about the quarterback. If we were certain about a quarterback, the Lions would have the pick and make that pick. This year, we're not necessarily sure about it. Kayvon Thibodeaux is the selection here, first overall for the Detroit Lions. He's the best combination of speed off the edge with good hands in the run game, can get after the quarterback, but also is very good at block shedding when needed, can make plays, can chase down a running back from behind on pull plays. He's got it all at that edge position. He's missed some time this year with an injury, but when he's played, he's been extremely productive, and I look for him to be the first overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. Pick 2 now, we move on to the Houston Texans, another team who's maybe considering that quarterback spot because of Deshaun Watson. They're going to look to trade him this offseason. I'm not sure how they're going to go about doing so with his legal matters. That still might slow things up by the draft. I'm not sold that Deshaun Watson is going to be fully cleared from all these investigations, that he's going to be, ready to focus on football. So I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get a deal done. My expectation is as soon as they're able to get a deal done, they will, and they'll probably get a first or 2 first-round picks in that deal at least, would be what I had to guess. But Houston here at 2, they have another situation where they have to make a decision, quarterback or best player available for that team. And I'm going best player available for that team, and I think they're going to end up actually going to make the decision on drafting Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan. My reasoning why, this one might be a little bit more confusing because a lot of people look at Hamilton and Stingley as the second, third best players in the class. I'm going Hutchinson here, even though I think Stingley and Hamilton are better players, because there's a little bit more consistency and longevity at the edge position. Edges are key all the time. We've seen that in the NFL. A lot of teams like the consistency of edge. Cornerbacks struggle early in their career. And then safeties, they go in and out in terms of how valuable they really are. Jamal Adams right now, not being a super high impact player for the Seattle Seahawks, if we're being completely honest with ourselves. The lack of longevity at those 2 positions kind of, makes Aiden Hutchinson a better pick here for Houston in some ways. Edges don't fade out easily. They have longer careers in general. And Aiden Hutchinson's always around the football as well. That makes it an easier pick here. Houston's going to go try and get a really good player who makes impactful plays all the time. That's going to be Aiden Hutchinson, second overall. Third overall now here, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're in a little bit of a different situation because they have 3 first-round picks in this mock draft, which is absolutely insane. So they're going to go here and just take best player available for their team. And based off the composition of this year's class, they're going to go at the safety position with Kyle Hamilton because there is a pretty stark drop-off between Kyle Hamilton and the second-best safety. Some view it as Jaquan Brisker from Penn State. Others view it as Jordan Battle from Alabama. But clearly, Kyle Hamilton at 6'4" is the best of the bunch at that position. I don't even think it's particularly close. In his career for the Fighting Irish, he has about 138 career tackles, 8 career interceptions, 7.5 tackles for loss. I think that shows his versatility, where you can play him. You can put him up in the box, play him as a deep safety. He's rangy, can cover the sideline. He is a very, very good player. And since Philadelphia has 3 first-round picks this year, they can afford to go with a position that maybe doesn't get valued as well as it should in the NFL at that safety spot. And Kyle Hamilton, a really good football player. I think that's the key here for the Eagles in their rebuild. Pick 4, we've got my New York Jets now on the clock. They have 2 picks here in the top 11. So I think starting at 4, it's important that you get someone who has extremely high upside that can become a franchise level player possibly. And for me, that's Derek Stingley Jr. from LSU. His freshman season was absolutely insane. Had 7 interceptions as a freshman in the SEC. That's incredible performance. However, he hasn't had that same level of production since then. But looking at him, the athleticism is incredible. Extremely fluid hips at that cornerback position. I trust him in man-to-man coverage, and I don't trust a lot of Jets cornerbacks in man-to-man coverage since we've had Darrelle Revis and Antonio Cromartie. I think Derek Stingley comes into New York, is instantly cornerback 1 for us, and we're looking at maybe Stingley Island. I would be really excited to see Derek Stingley come in 4th overall. I think it's good value. And of course, I think it does make a lot of sense with our current roster construction as well. We've built out some of that D-line. We've got CJ Mosley, hopefully for the long term at that linebacker spot in the middle. We'll see what happens with Marcus May. He's injured and out right now and in his contract year, so I'm not really counting on him. I think the secondary has to become a key point of emphasis for us, and Derek Stingley, a really good grab 4th overall. Moving on to pick 5, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars here, who are kind of at an interesting spot here because they would have loved to grab some of these top 4 defensive players in Thibodeaux, Hutchinson, Hamilton, and Stingley. They would have loved to improve on that side of the football. However, now with where the class is, they're kind of faced with a challenge here of, do we go with George Karlaftis, who has been rising up boards as of late? Surprisingly, he's actually younger than Kayvon Thibodeaux, so maybe his upside's really, really high as well. He's a beast in the run game. He's still developing as a pass rusher, though. Or do they go with someone like Evan Neal, who is a really projectable tackle, has great athleticism, and has been really good in his career for Alabama? That's the way they're going to go here. You need to find your franchise tackle. Cam Robinson's playing on the franchise tag right now. Best case scenario, they draft Evan Neal. He becomes their long-term left tackle. Cam Robinson actually kicks into guard with his athleticism. And I think you're looking at a really good left side of the line there for Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars moving forward. Pick 6, we got the Washington football team here. And this becomes another interesting scenario because, like I said earlier, the quarterbacks aren't the strongest in this year's class. Let's be honest about that. Last year, we had a very strong quarterback class. This year's a little bit more shaky. I think that there are some NFL starting quarterbacks here and maybe even a guy or two that could become really, really good in their NFL careers. However, they're less projectable, less sure things at the NFL level based off of what we've seen so far. Let's go ahead and look at that actual quarterback spot. And there is some good ones out here, some guys who I think are going to be very, very solid players in the NFL very early on into their career. And the best one here for me is Matt Corral. He is really, really good at running the football. I don't think a lot of people talk about that enough with him. The Ole Miss product can run the football very effectively. He's a little bit shorter at that quarterback position than maybe you'd prefer. Obviously, you'd love to see a 6'4", 6'5" guy who can also move, has the greatest arm in the world. But what Matt Corral does is he puts a lot of zip on the ball, and he's got an extremely quick throwing motion. Curtis Samuel specifically is going to be the guy with the biggest smile from this selection because I think Matt Corral and Curtis Samuel would make money together for the long term. Those two guys, it just makes sense the way that Curtis Samuel plays. gadget guy, can get him the ball in a bunch of different areas, and Matt Corral can zip it to those areas. I think he also has really good arm strength throwing it down the field. Terry McLaurin's going to like that, but McLaurin's going to be successful with whatever quarterback you have. I think Curtis Samuel with Matt Corral really sets apart this Washington offense for the future. Pick 7, we got Philadelphia here again on the clock. Earlier at pick 3, we saw them go with Kyle Hamilton, and they're sitting here with an opportunity to maybe double down on that defense or come back and look at the offensive side of the ball. I'm going defense here for Philadelphia. I love the idea of really building out that defense, and we're going to go with George Karlaftis. We talked about the upside, really stark in the run game. They brought back Fletcher Cox as well. They didn't trade him at the deadline. We'll see if they can get a contract done with him long term, but based off of some of the edges that they currently have on their roster, it looks like a lot of those players are going to be out in free agency this year, which means George Karlaftis immediately comes in as a starter day one, and I think has a really high impact for this Eagles team, especially in the run game. Karlaftis' freshman season for Purdue, the Boilermakers, he put up 17 tackles for loss in a college football season. He is very good in the run game, and I think he's going to be someone that the Eagles look to build around along that defensive front. 8 and 9 here, we got the Giants back-to-back here. Of course, that pick comes from the Chicago Bears trade for Justin Fields. Remember, you can get that Justin Fields jersey by hitting the like button, also subscribing and leaving a comment. And 8-9 here, I kind of went back and forth on what to do for the Giants. They're one of the more interesting teams to mock in this process because I think that they could be motivated by trading down again. We are not doing trade downs in this video, but it would make sense for them to maybe move down, try and really collect more long-term assets. That would be awesome for that team. But 8-9 is also a rare opportunity to have 2 top 10 picks back-to-back. You get to double down on whatever you want to. And there's something here that I really like. Pick 8, they're going with Tyler Linderbaum, an All-American center from Iowa. Very smart player, and I think that's one of the most underrated positions in all of football. When you can get a really good center who can help diagnose pass rush, blitz scenarios, and also just kind of set the offensive line straight on, hey, you're blocking here, I'm here, let's get our pass protection right. And it's also going to really help Saquon Barkley because not only are they doing that, but they are coming back and grabbing Kenyon Green, a very fun guard to watch. There's elements to him that remind me of Quentin Nelson. Now, I don't think he's going to be quite the player Quentin Nelson is, but he's an extremely aware player at that guard position. He helps double team blocks so well. He's very heady on the offensive line. You add in 2 really smart offensive linemen right next to each other in Tyler Linderbaum and Kenyon Green, and you've got something brewing for the next 5 to 10 years at least. There's a lot of longevity at that offensive line spot when you draft them this high. I think Linderbaum, Kenyon Green, 2 really good football players. You get them in the top 10. Giants double down on offensive line. You put them next to Andrew Thomas, who's been a really good offensive tackle for the Giants this season when he's been healthy. They have fully fleshed out the center to left side of their offensive line. Now it's about trying to find a right guard maybe. Maybe you kick over your current left guard now, and then maybe Matthew Peart becomes that long-term right tackle. That's yet to be seen what he's fully going to be, but I think this is a really good scenario for the New York Giants. Pick 10, we got the Miami Dolphins here now on the clock, and they're another team who's been desperately in need of some offensive line help. So I'm going to go with Charles Cross here out of Mississippi State. I think he's just a very well-rounded tackle, and he's going to sit in at that right tackle spot, which is currently the blind side for Tua Tagovailoa. Now, I'm not sure if he's going to be their long-term starting quarterback. If a trade for Deshaun Watson gets done, this pick would be Houston's to make, but Charles Cross here goes to Miami in this mock draft. Pick 11, we got my New York Jets on the clock again. Remember, we went with Derek Stingley, 4th overall in this one. And at pick 11, I'm trying to consider every possible avenue that makes sense for my New York Jets. We know how much Joe Douglas likes to build out that offensive line. For that reason, I want to go take a look at the tackle spots. I know a lot of people like Ike Mekwonu. He's really good in the run game, but the Jets have already tried to build that aspect of their offensive line. Mekhi Becton really good in the run game, and also Elijah Vera Tucker. I think that's really where his upside is. He's a very well-rounded blocker, pass, and run, but I think he's specifically better in the run game. So I don't want to go down with a run-blocking offensive tackle here in Ike Mekwonu. I want to double down and go onto a pass-blocking offensive lineman, someone who's really good in pass set situations. And to me, that is Nicholas Pettit-Freer from Ohio State, one of the best offensive linemen when it comes to pass blocking. He's going to be really good. Maybe it looks a little high based on the rank, but trust me, Pettit-Freer is worthy of this selection. Rashawn Slater was the best pass blocker last year, and he's looked like the best tackle so far in year one of the NFL as a rookie. Best pass blocker amongst the rookies, excuse me. Nicholas Petitford, I think, is going to be the best pass blocker among all these rookies year one as well. There's a lot of value going with this pick. We need to give Zach Wilson time to go through progressions, make his reads, and then deliver the football. Petitford, a phenomenal addition here along the offensive line. Pick 12, we got the Minnesota Vikings now at this point, and it's going to be the cornerback spot. I'm not sure if Mike Zimmer's going to be back next season for the Minnesota Vikings. They sit at 3-5. It's been a massive disappointment season for them up to this point. And here they have to find a cornerback. I think one key issue with this team, there's just not been consistency. Cam Dantzler's been in and out of the lineup with some COVID stuff, hasn't just been getting playtime in general. And then when he has had playtime, he just doesn't have the speed to deal with some of the faster wide receivers in the NFL. And he's had his fair share of struggles. Bashad Breeland, beginning part of the year, really struggled. He's picked up his play a little bit. However, he's on a one-year deal. I don't know if the Vikings are looking to bring him back next season. And then Patrick Peterson, of course, has that hamstring he's been dealing with. Again, only on a one-year deal. Cornerback has to be the selection here for the Minnesota Vikings. I know they've missed on some in the past. Mike Hughes, Trey Waynes. Also, you have names. Oh, Jeff Gladney, excuse me. Name was slipping me for a second. Ahmad Gardner here is the selection from Cincinnati. He's been really solid for the Bearcats. He's a 6'2" cornerback, has 8 career interceptions, hasn't given up a passing touchdown in man-to-man coverage over the last 2 years of college football, and he has 2 career touchdowns himself. So he knows what to do when he gets the ball in his hands. He's a very well-rounded man-to-man corner, and I think that is what solves a lot of the issues there in Minnesota. Pick 13, we got the Carolina Panthers here now on the clock. And I think it's becoming more and more apparent that Sam Darnold is not the guy. As a Jets fan, I told Panthers fans this when they traded for him. I was surprised we got a second and a fourth. I know it's the quarterback position. They get overvalued in trade all the time. Look at Josh Rosen, what he got traded for a few years back from Arizona to Miami. But at the end of the day, you know, he's just not the player that they want him to be. Even in Joe Brady's offense, it's just not going to work. Sam Darnold's not the guy you want. I don't care that they already took up the 5th-year option on him. Now is the time you take a quarterback. Malik Willis out of Liberty. He is special in a lot of ways. Last 2 seasons, he's thrown for 41 passing touchdowns and has run for 24 touchdowns. He is a very dynamic player at that quarterback position, and I think this is something that could really open up that Carolina offense, bringing in some mobility. When the Panthers were rolling to start the year, Sam Darnold was running, using his legs. Slowly over time, Darnold isn't the athlete that Malik Willis is. They were able to contain him, keep him in the pocket a little bit more, get after him a little bit more with pressure, and Darnold's numbers really dropped after that. Malik Willis is the opposite. He's going to thrive against pressure. He's going to be able to use his legs. Now, I know he didn't play the best against Ole Miss, but let's be honest, the Liberty Flames do not have a ton of talent on that roster. Malik Willis, far and away their best player, and I think he comes into Carolina and instantly, when surrounded by talent, has a very successful rookie season, especially after the Panthers go ahead and sign Cam Newton today for the rest of the season. Pick 14, I know it says the Indianapolis Colts here. However, we are picking for the Philadelphia Eagles because the assumption is Carson Wentz does play 75% of the snaps this season. And here at 14, there's a few ways that the Eagles could look. I think Kingsley Enagbari could be an option here for Philadelphia. We've already went with Aiden Hutchinson, and we've also gone with Kyle Hamilton, or not Aiden Hutchinson, excuse me, George Karlaftis and Kyle Hamilton. So we brought in 2 good defensive players, and we are doubling down on that defensive side of the ball, but we're going to go to the quarterback spot. Kaiir Elam out of Florida makes a lot of sense here for me. You pair him with Darius Slay, who's on the back end of his career. Kaiir Elam, maybe he struggles a little bit year one, but that's okay. You've already got help for him behind him in Kyle Hamilton. Then you also brought in a good edge player in George Karlaftis. This is a home run style draft. Again, home run level draft for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's hard. Every single draft, I feel like I have to say that because they have 3 picks in the top half of the first round. That is extremely rare. This is such a good opportunity for Philadelphia. They've nailed it with this. And Kaiir Elam, another good selection in the first round. Pick 15, we got the Denver Broncos here now on the clock. And this is a pick that I think makes a ton of sense to me. George Patton, their GM now, who was the former assistant GM of the Minnesota Vikings, has had a lot of experience with drafting linebackers and getting good linebacker play for his defenses. And I think right now the Denver Broncos are really missing that consistency at the linebacker spot. They're going to go with Nakobe Dean, a very athletic linebacker who's a thumper in the run game, can get downhill, can get into the backfield, make plays behind the line of scrimmage. And he's going to be very, very valuable for that. I think there's also room for him to grow in pass coverage. George Patton loves to see good linebacker play, and he hasn't had it yet with the Broncos. We know they're going to look defense. That's what they do historically. George Patton's going to want to continue building that side of the ball. Nakobe Dean makes sense to me. I know that quarterback's an option. However, I just don't see them doing that with Malik Willis off the board at 15. Maybe they trade down during the actual draft to find a quarterback a little bit later. Nakobe Dean, though, I think just really, really good player. He's going to come in and make a lot of plays for that team. Pick 16, now we got the Cincinnati Bengals here on the clock, and this is another rare opportunity for them because there's a player who, in my estimation, is probably a top 7 or 8 guy in the class, and he's available here at pick 16. That is DeMarvin Leal out of Texas A&M. He is a playmaker along the defensive line. 116 career tackles there at Texas A&M. Has 21 career tackles for loss, 10 sacks, and even an interception. He makes a lot of plays. He's around the football, hard-nosed guy, likes to get in there and work, can play along the interior, but can really work along the edge as well. Him and Trey Hendrickson become 2 really good power rushers for that team. I think he's got good bend off the edge as well. He could fit there in Cincinnati. You're looking at a much improved defensive front just with the addition of DeMarvin Leal. Pick 17, we got the Cleveland Browns here, so staying in the state of Ohio. And that'll actually be the theme of this pick here because we're staying in Ohio one more time, going with Garrett Wilson. The 6-foot wide receiver has been the model of consistency for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Doesn't matter who's throwing him the football. He's been putting up pretty solid numbers week in, week out, and it's been true this year as well. He's surpassed Chris Olave this year as the best Ohio State wide receiver. And I think that him going 17th here to Cleveland makes a ton of sense. They need another wideout who can create separation off the line of scrimmage, and he doesn't have to be a high volume guy. Jarvis Landry is going to draw in a lot of targets. Also, you have some nice security blankets there at the tight end position with Hooper and Njoku. You've got some weapons there. I think Garrett Wilson comes in, is given some time to develop, and can end up becoming a true wide receiver 1 in the NFL. Pick 18, we got the Kansas City Chiefs here, and I'm really, really tempted to look at that wide receiver position. There are some really, really good ones out here yet at this point. I've just decided, though, I don't think I can afford to do that. They have some bigger needs, and I'm starting at the cornerback spot. Trent McDuffie, 5'10" corner, maybe 5'11" at best. Pretty standard prototypical weight for the position, though. Really, really good tackler and really, really has a knack for coverage. He doesn't give up a lot of catches, doesn't even get targeted very often for that Washington team. They haven't had the season they were hoping to have this year, but Trent McDuffie has had his own personal season that he needed to have to be a top 20 pick. He goes 18th here to Kansas City. They solve a really, really big need on their team. I think L'Jarius Sneed maybe bounces back year 2. Maybe Mike Hughes sticks in the slot and Trent McDuffie becomes another really, really solid boundary corner for them. I could also see McDuffie functioning out of the slot. Either way, Kansas City gets better with this selection, and that's their key goal. Pick 19, we got the Atlanta Falcons here now on the clock. And this is a pick that I actually have really, really fallen in love with the idea of. Let's go ahead, look along the interior defensive line. I know that they have Grady Jarrett, but I think that they just have to go best player available here. And I know some people will argue that that is Jordan Davis out of Georgia. He stays in Atlanta here, stays in the state of Georgia, and goes to the Falcons. You add a high impact player who can get in on plays, can get in behind the line of scrimmage, shows a good blend of athleticism, quickness, and power when getting after the quarterback. And he's going to be a disruptor in the run game. That's really a key thing. Grady Jarrett, again, another beast along the defensive front. Teams are not going to be excited about going against these two players. And I think Jordan Davis becomes a very, very solid piece for that Atlanta Falcons team. Pick 20 here. I'm looking at the New England Patriots, and there's a specific guy that I want to talk about for this team. It comes at the wide receiver position. We know that Nick Saban has a really good relationship with Bill Belichick, and Jamison Williams is going to be the byproduct of that relationship. The Alabama Crimson Tide receiver has taken off in his first year with the Crimson Tide. A former Ohio State Buckeye, never really got a lot of play time. There was buried behind Chris Olave and also behind Garrett Wilson. Gets his chance in Alabama, and he has shown out for the Crimson Tide. Didn't get a chance to catch passes from Mac Jones in college. That will not be true in the NFL. He gets a chance every single Sunday now to be Mac Jones, #1 target for the New England Patriots. I think this is good value. He's one of those late risers throughout the season. I don't think a lot of people ever saw him as a first-round pick coming into the year. He's shown that he's worthy of that and has been very productive for the Crimson Tide. Pick 21 now, we are looking at the New Orleans Saints here. And based off their situation, this pick might be a little surprising to our viewers. I want to look at the quarterback spot because, of course, there was a serious injury to their starting quarterback, Jameis Winston. I don't know if they're sold that Taysom Hill can be the long-term starter or even the short-term starter. I don't know how they're fully feeling about that. And with Jameis Winston probably not going to be ready by the start of next season, I think they go with Sam Howell here. I think that they use his injury as the reasoning on why, hey, we finally have to take a quarterback. Sam Howell's projected top 5 pick coming into the year. His loss of weapons there in UNC has caused him a little bit more struggles than we're accustomed to seeing, but he's been very consistent as a 3-year starter for the Tar Heels. He comes in pick 21 and I think immediately can be a starter. He's going to use Alvin Kamara well. He's going to use Michael Thomas well when Michael Thomas is fully healthy. And I think the Saints probably look on days 2 and 3 to find some more skill position players, probably look for a #2 level wide receiver. Hopefully they can find one in round 2. And then also in round 3, probably look along the defense, maybe another cornerback as well. But the Saints need a quarterback now, given the situation with Jameis Winston. This pick is very, very motivated by Jameis Winston's injury. I think Sam Howell should be considered at pick 21, which leaves us at the Steelers pick 22, and I'm sure they're not super happy to see Sam Howell off the board. I would have actually mocked Sam Howell to them, but instead I'm going to the quarterback position in a different way. Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. He's the second Bearcat we've had go in the first round. Remember, Ahmad Gardner went pick 12. 10 picks later, Desmond Ridder comes off the board. Another dynamic quarterback, has similar upside level to Malik Willis, maybe not as polished of a thrower at this point, doesn't necessarily have as big of an arm in my estimation, but I think can make a lot of plays, especially with his feet, which is going to be huge there in Pittsburgh. They need help along the offensive line. It was hard for me to not go with Ike Ekwonu. He makes a lot of sense here. However, without Ben Roethlisberger under contract for next season, I find it extremely unlikely that the Steelers are willing to roll into their following year with their backup quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph. I don't think he's going to be a starting level quarterback in the NFL. Desmond Ridder comes in, is probably going to be the starter day 1. I think that they need to do that. And then they open up some money moving on from Roethlisberger. Maybe they look to patch up the offensive line a little bit with some veterans, get some more stability along the offensive front. That's really their best case scenario at this point. Ike Ekwonu doesn't fix the whole offensive line. That was my reasoning here. Desmond Ridder maybe helps alleviate some of the pressure just with his mobility. Pick 23, we're looking at the Las Vegas Raiders now at this point, and they're a team who is really, really happy to see Andrew Booth Jr. here from Clemson. They've had their struggles in round 1 of the NFL draft, especially as of late. Of course, Damon Arnett got cut this past week. We also saw Henry Ruggs get released from his DUI fatality charges. Raiders have struggled. Mike Mayock likes to look at the big-time programs. Clemson, of course, is that big-time program. They haven't had the year they're looking for, but Andrew Booth Jr. has been very good and really rose up boards throughout this draft process. He is a really good tackling cornerback, stands at about 6 feet tall, hasn't had the most production in coverage, but he hasn't gotten torched consistently either. He's been, at worst, a solid cornerback in terms of coverage and has had really good upside as a run-stopping cornerback, someone who can also blow up screens, and is a really, really strong player at the cornerback spot. I think really where his growth comes is if he can develop as a man-to-man press corner with consistency in the NFL. He's strong enough to do it. They just need to coach him up on some of that technique, and I think he becomes a really, really good pick, 23rd overall. Pick 24 now, the Dallas Cowboys were probably going to consider Andrew Booth Jr. here, but with him off the board, I think that they actually look in a different direction. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the linebacker position. And there's a few good ones out here. Devin Lloyd, who's been a riser as of late, he makes some sense, but there's also Christian Harris out here, and he's the guy I opt for in this situation. Has 4 pass defense this year, also very, very good tackler. I think that that's really where his strong suit is in the run game. He's going to be a thumper. I think he's a really good complement to Micah Parsons, who offers that athleticism, can rush off the edge a little bit, kind of more of a do-it-all, whereas Christian Harris, that more traditional 2-down linebacker, but can function on 3rd down as well. This is not just a 2-down linebacker pick. He can play 3rd down, but he's best on those first 2 downs, helping in the run game. Has over 180 career tackles for the Crimson Tide, was a 3-year starter and is only a junior. If that gives you an idea of how good of a player he's been in his career for the Crimson Tide. He's a great pickup here for the Dallas Cowboys, 24th overall. They go linebacker in back-to-back drafts. Pick 25, we got the Buffalo Bills now on the clock, and this is an interesting spot because we've been looking a lot at the cornerback position for him, but we've had a ton of cornerbacks go off the board already in what I feel is a very, very strong cornerback class. Instead, they're going to take advantage that only one wide receiver up to this point has gone off the board. That is Garrett Wilson and Jamison Williams. But 25 here now, they're sitting with their selection of wide receivers, and they're going to go with Treylon Burks. He's been a touchdown machine at 6'3". And I know this is probably a surprising pick. Remember, Cole Beasley is going to be 33 years old next season. Emmanuel Sanders is only on a 1-year deal. I know the Bills really like Gabriel Davis, but Treylon Burks is so much better than Gabe Davis already. You add in an elite or a really, really good number 2 wide receiver option next to Stephon Diggs, who's had some of his own struggles this year that I don't think anyone was really expecting. He's still a really good player, don't get me wrong. Just fantasy-wise hasn't put up the numbers that he did his first year with Josh Allen that I think a lot of people were looking for him to even build off of. But I think Treylon Burks comes in and is a phenomenal piece into that offense. You now have 3 really good long-term receivers in Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Treylon Burks. That becomes a lot to handle, especially if Brian Daboll is still the offensive coordinator next year. He'll be the name to watch for Buffalo. He might get a head coaching gig somewhere else. Pick 26 now, we look at the Los Angeles Chargers, a team that's probably going to be looking to replace Mike Williams, and there's a really, really good option here on the board to do that. Drake London. I know he had surgery. He's out for the rest of the season, but when he's played this year at 6'5", by the way, in 8 games, he had 88 catches, 1,084 yards, and 7 touchdowns. That's essentially 1 touchdown a game, 11 catches a game, and 120 or so yards a game. He's been monstrous for the USC Trojans when he was healthy, and he had a very similar injury to what Jalen Waddle had actually for Alabama that kept him out basically his entire last season of college football, and Jalen Waddle was still a top 10 pick. Drake London going 26th is not crazy based off the injury. He's a first-round level player. I'd be shocked if he doesn't go in the first round. In fact, I considered him higher. I considered him here at pick 17 for the Cleveland Browns. I even considered him higher than that. I considered him here 14 for the Philadelphia Eagles to add another really, really good wide receiver option for Jalen Hurts. Drake London is a really, really good football player. If he was healthy, he would for sure be up here in this area. Instead, I have him go 26th overall to LA. He stays in SoCal, and I think that's a really good situation for him. Pick 27, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here, a team that I think is just really, really good top to bottom. Everyone knows that, and they're going to get better here with this selection. Kenneth Walker, the 3rd out of Michigan State. Phenomenal fit into what Tampa Bay looks to do. Kenneth Walker is the perfect blend of power and quickness at the running back spot. Really, really good change of direction ability. And the crazy thing is, I think a lot of people assume he's just been worn into the ground. This year, he has 198 carries, which, don't get me wrong, that's a lot. He's been very productive in those 198 carries, averaging over 6.5 yards a carry at 1,340 yards, has 15 rushing touchdowns this season. But before that, before transferring to Michigan State, didn't get used a ton. Had never had more than 150 carries in a year before coming to Michigan State. He's only a junior. He's got young legs, fresh legs, and he's so dynamic. I think he's the running back that Tampa Bay's been missing. Takes this offense to a whole nother level. They've got to figure out what they're doing with Chris Godwin, of course. He is not under a long-term contract, so he'll be the name to watch as well this offseason for them. But Kenneth Walker, really, really good acquisition here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Pick 28 now, looking at the Detroit Lions on the clock. This pick comes from the Los Angeles Rams, and I'm here at a point where I'm sold on what they're going to do. They're going to go with Chris Olave, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. This Buckeye has over 30 career receiving touchdowns for Ohio State. Would have been a first-round pick last year had he come out and decided to go back to college. I don't know why. He cost himself about $5 million this season just because he didn't play in the NFL. Now, of course, name, image, and likeness, he probably has made some money, I'm sure, with how good of a player he is. However, definitely could have made more money in the NFL. Came back, didn't even help his draft stock. In fact, hurt it a little bit, in my opinion, but still an all-around good player. Detroit grabs him here. They need a wide receiver. They're going to move into Goff probably being the starter next season again would be my guess. Chris Olave, really good acquisition, though. Pick 29, we got the Baltimore Ravens here, and this is going to be an A++++ level pick because we've had Ike Ekwonu fall a little bit. There's some teams in here that I thought would consider him. Of course, the Chargers, the Bills, the Dallas Cowboys would consider him. However, he's mainly a run blocking tackle. That's really where his strength is, and a lot of these teams like to air the ball out in here. You know, Pittsburgh would have made some sense. I did consider him there, like I talked about, but for the most part, there wasn't a lot of teams that I thought, hey, this is for sure the fit that Ike Ekwonu is going to want, that he's going to be the best player for them at that tackle spot that he can be. Baltimore is that destination. Baltimore loves to run the football. Ike Ekwonu comes in, A+ level pick for the Baltimore Ravens. They need a tackle. He comes in at right tackle, really stout in the run game. He's going to be a mauler at that tackle spot. J.K. Dobbins has a huge smile coming back from an ACL injury because he's going to get to run behind Ike Ekwonu. Lamar Jackson also extremely happy about this, and John Harbaugh probably the happiest of all of them, having Ike Ekwonu along his offensive front. Pick 30, we got the Green Bay Packers here now on the clock, and I think they're a team that's going to be looking at either the tackle or edge spot. The tackle spot, there's a few decent ones out here. Trevor Penning would be someone I consider. Darian Kinnard would make some sense. Even a guy like Sean Ryan out of UCLA, I would consider him here. However, there's just someone who's too good to pass up. That's Kingsley Enagbare out of South Carolina. We've had him go as high as, I think, pick 10 on the channel. He goes all the way down to 30 here, but he's a perfect fit into their defense. You bring in a really good athlete that I think could really help this football team out. I know that they got question marks at the wide receiver position long term. We don't know what Devontae Adams is going to do this offseason, if he's going to stay in Green Bay or take free agency seriously, maybe go to Las Vegas. I think that's a real possibility. Kingsley Enagbare, though, a very good football player, comes in 30th overall to Green Bay. Pick 31, got the Tennessee Titans now on the clock, and there is one position of need that I have to identify for this team. That is cornerback. They drafted Caleb Farley last year. I love this selection. However, of course, there's going to always be those injury concerns. That's why he fell as far as he did in the last draft. He would have been a top 10 pick had he been healthy, in my opinion. Was not healthy, ended up falling to them. I'm still glad that they took him. They needed him, especially after some of the moves they made to save money last offseason. Moving on from Malcolm Butler, for example. However, 31st overall here now, they go with Darian Kendrick out of Georgia. Lengthy corner, stands at about 6'1", 6'2". Really good arm length, and he's good in coverage. He's held up against some of the best in college football. Got exposed a little bit in the national title game a few years back when he was playing for Clemson against LSU. But let's be honest, we've seen Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase abuse and expose pretty much every NFL cornerback at this point. Darian Kendrick getting exposed looks a lot better against those two now after we've seen them do it to basically every single NFL defense. Darian Kendrick, a really good pickup here for Tennessee at a much needed position, which leaves Arizona kind of sad because I think Darian Kendrick would have been the selection for them had he been on the board. 32nd overall, though, they're just going to go best player available. And to me, that is Drake Jackson. Adam Anderson could have been, there could have been a real argument for him here if he didn't have some of the off the field stuff going on. Drake Jackson, though, been very productive for the Trojans. Second Drake from USC to get drafted actually here in the first round. Has over 100 career tackles, 24 tackles for loss, and 12 sacks. A good pickup along the edge. I think it makes a lot of sense. He's an immediate upgrade over Marcus Golden. Of course, J.J. Watts suffered a ton of injuries in his career. We don't know the long-term situation for Chandler Jones there in Arizona. They've got a great team right now, and they capitalize here 32nd overall. We'll scroll through quick on the results. I'm surprised by this C+ grade of Kayvon Thibodeaux. The best player in the class goes first overall. Shows why PFF doesn't always make sense. Evan Neal's a phenomenal pick here. Should not be a B. Tyler Linderbaum's a phenomenal pick here for the New York Giants. That should not be a C-. He's easily the best center in the class, and I think there's a huge drop-off after him. Kenyon Green should be higher. I mean, they just don't value the offensive line at all here. Nicholas Pettit-Frew, when he ends up being one of the best pass blockers from this class, really good in pass set situations. I don't know why that's a D-level pick. I just don't think that PFF is very accurate with their rating. Obviously, they like the Kaiir Elam pick. I'm not exactly sure what makes Kaiir Elam so much better than Ahmad Gardner when Ahmad Gardner's been more productive. Maybe doesn't have as much projectable upside, but at the same time, Kaiir Elam's a little bit more of a risk coming into the NFL. DeMarvin Leal, I mean, this is phenomenal value here. That should not be a B+ pick. Trent McDuffie, I do agree here, A+ pick just based off their needs. Jordan Davis, I agree. See, they just love the quarterback selection so much. I don't know what PFF's deal is with that. Chris Olave, they gave an A+ here. Kingsley Enagbare, Did not like the Darian Kendrick pick. Overall, though, I think that it was a really, really good draft for a lot of teams. Kenneth Walker here, that's the one I'm like, I don't know, because Ike Mekwonu does make a ton of sense to Tampa Bay to save them some money with Donovan Smith. So maybe I would have reconsidered that one. But overall, I mean, Kenneth Walker is just so good for Michigan State this year that it's hard to not include him in the first round, especially when there's some running back needy teams. We could maybe even flip these two. Kenneth Walker goes into Baltimore after the injuries that they had, even J.K. Dobbins. I know they don't necessarily need a first round running back in Baltimore, but it would be really, really fun to see Kenneth Walker there for the Ravens. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about this draft. Again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for the Justin Fields jersey giveaway. Again, thank you guys so much for taking your time to watch this video. We do really appreciate it here at Utility Sports. We'd love to have your guys' long-term support. So if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, and we'll catch you guys in the very next Utility Sports video.